So obviously, as many of you guys know, continuing, there was obviously a great debate that took place in the second night as well. I just spoke about the first debate between that included Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. But then the second debate, I actually thought was not as substantive because there was a lot more centrists on that panel on that stage of presidential candidates. But the two people that that definitely got the most attention was Kamala Harris and Tulsi Gabbard. So what happened was Tulsi Gabbard, Tulsi had gone after Kamala Harris before, and she criticized Kamala for, and this is something I did not agree with did not agree with Tulsi Gabbard on, where she criticized Kamala Harris for going after Joe Biden and just trying to make a name, or just trying to make a name for her, something along those of trying to make a name for herself, or just trying to get attention, and using this as an issue just to attack Biden for stupid reasons, which I did not agree with. And she was kind of making a bad argument, agreeing with Biden about how he worked with segregationists and stuff. And so Tulsi was not right in that in her framing or what she said during that. And this was after the debate. But in this debate, they asked her about that. They actually asked her about how she defended Biden, and smartly, I'm guessing this is something that she heard from her strategist, but smartly she stayed away from that, and she actually Tulsi actually changed that around and decided to go after Kamala Harris, but not on that same issue. She decided to go after her on a different issue. So I don't want to ruin it for you guys. So why don't you just listen to this clip? This is about a 3-minute clip of from the debate where Tulsi and Kamala are going at it, and then we're going to talk about it on the other side.
Body cameras on special agents in the state of California, and I'm proud of that work.
I want to bring in Congresswoman Gabbard. Congresswoman Gabbard, you took issue with Senator Harris confronting Vice President Biden at the last debate. You called it a, quote, false accusation that Joe Biden is a racist. What's your response?
I want to bring the conversation back to the broken criminal justice system that is disproportionately negatively impacting Black and brown people all across this country today. Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. That would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Senator Harris, your response.
As the elected Attorney General of California, I did the work of significantly reforming the criminal justice system of a state of 40 million people, which became a national model for the work that needs to be done. And I am proud of that work. And I am proud of making a decision to not just give fancy speeches or be in a legislative body and give speeches on the floor, but actually doing the work of being in the position to use the power that I had to reform a system that is badly in need of reform. That is why we created initiatives that were about reentering former offenders and getting them counseling. It is why, and because I know that criminal justice system is so broken, that I am an advocate for what we need to do to not only decriminalize, but legalize marijuana in the United States.
I want to bring Congresswoman Gabbard back in. Your response,
The bottom line is, Senator Harris, when you are in a position to make a difference and an impact in these people's lives, you did not. And worse yet, in the case of those who were on death row, innocent people, you actually blocked evidence from being revealed that would have freed them until you were forced to do so. There is no excuse for that. And the people who suffered under your reign as prosecutor, you owe them an apology.
Senator Harris.
My entire career, I have been personally opposed to the death penalty, and that has never changed. And I dare anybody who is in a position to make that decision, to face the people I have faced, to say, I will not seek the death penalty. That is my background. That is my work. I am proud of it. I think you can judge people by when they are under fire, and it's not about some fancy opinion on a stage, but when they're in the position to actually make a decision, what do they do? When I was in the position of having to decide whether or not to seek a death penalty on cases I prosecuted, I made a very difficult decision that was not popular to not seek the death penalty. History shows that, and I am proud of those decisions.
Senator Harris, thank you very much.
So if you notice there, Kamala Harris did not address any of Tulsi Gabbard's points, and Tulsi Gabbard got a huge pop from the audience. You know, Kamala claims that, I did a lot of work in reforming the criminal justice system. That's not true at all. She put so many people. She put so many people in jail. She was responsible for putting, as Tulsi Gabbard mentioned, she maintained the cash bail system, which largely affects the minority and poor communities, whether you're white, black, whatever. But a lot of African Americans are affected by that. And Kamala Harris, being a person of color, being an African American, you would think like, oh, you know what, you might want to fix that. Like that might be something you want to focus on and make a main issue for you to for you to kind of tackle and deal with, instead of perpetuating the system. And she only made it worse. And there's articles out there. I can put them for you guys on the description box below. But there's articles talking about how she put people in jail. So people that were like they were accused of crimes, and then they were kept. They were kept from there was a certain amount of evidence that wasn't, as even Tulsi Gabbard noted, there was evidence that was not allowed to be put onto the public record for Kamala Harris to consider this person not being innocent. Not being guilty, and instead being innocent. And she refused to hear it. She when it comes to the death penalty, she kind of waffled on that in her response. She's like, well, I always stood up against the death penalty, but you still allowed the death penalty to affect the life of somebody that was on death row, and then you refuse to take him off of it. I mean, yeah, the issue of death penalty is a serious issue when it comes to just kind of on a larger scale of just morality and human decency. It's a big deal. If you ask right-wingers and stuff, they're like, oh no, we're all about the death penalty, we're all about putting killers to death and stuff, when in many cases there come situations where the wrong people are killed, let alone the fact that the cocktails that are put into their bodies to kill them, to put them to death, end up end up not working and forcing the person to suffer as they are pretty much dying, as they are lying there, suffering through basically a traumatic, as if they were getting shot in the chest. This is almost at the same level of just going through that kind of torture. And the fact that can't, that has happened, and I think that happened in Oklahoma once. One of the states was Oklahoma, I believe, and another one may have been Missouri. I forget. But yeah, these are issues that are involved in the the discussion of the death penalty. But when it comes to Warren, though, yeah, her record on criminal justice and as Attorney General, as the District Attorney of San Francisco, are very, very checkered, very troubling. And after this happened, after the Tulsi Gabbard went after Kamala for this, the hashtag the next day, I was seeing this on social media, specifically on Twitter, the hashtag Kamala Harris destroyed, or Kamala destroyed, kind of some derivative of that, basically with destroyed in there and her name. It popped up, and people started using that all over the place, and it got so much attention on Twitter, and it got to the point that Twitter had to actually find a way to hide it. And but yeah, leftists and people that don't agree with Kamala Harris's history as Attorney General and District Attorney, they went after her hard. I know I was one of them. I called out several people that were defending her, and they had no defense of her. Now, of course, the Kamala Harris campaign, as they did last time when Tulsi Gabbard, and I discussed this on the last show too. I did a segment on it where Tulsi went after her, and then she responded in a cheap manner, and Kamala Harris once again personally, she decided to respond in a cheap manner, and this is also something her campaign did too. But she did it this time. She decided to do it herself as well. So check out this post-debate interview that she did with Anderson Cooper, and then we'll discuss it on the other side.
Did you expect that from Tulsi Gabbard? Had you had interaction about that in the past, and how do you think it went?
Well, I mean, listen, this is going to sound immodest, but I'm obviously a top-tier candidate, and so I did expect that I would be on the stage and take hits tonight, because there are a lot of people that are trying to make the stage for the next debate.
Yeah, for a lot of them, it's do or die.
Well, yeah, and especially when people are at 0 or 1% or whatever she might be at. And so I did expect that I might take hits tonight. But, listen, I think that this coming from someone who has been an apologist for an individual, Assad, who has murdered the people of his country like cockroaches. She who has embraced and been an apologist for him in a way that she refuses to call him a war criminal. I can only take what she says in her opinion so seriously. And so I'm prepared to move on.
So look how condescending Kamala Harris is towards Tulsi Gabbard there. Does not respond to the question, respond to the accusations of her. Now, to be fair, she did during the debate. So even though she did horribly, answered horribly to Tulsi Gabbard, just kind of deflecting and distracting away from her record and saying, as we discussed, trying to rationalize her record as Attorney General and DA. But here she's just all out, just fucking, ridiculous attack about her being, Tulsi being a Assad apologist. This is something that she said, again, as I covered last week, this was something she said after Tulsi criticized her foreign policy record. Now, and I'm sorry, her campaign specifically went after, not Tulsi. But, and okay, fine. If you want to bring it up in a foreign policy conversation, a foreign policy kind of debate, that's a different story. This had nothing to do with foreign policy. This had to do with specifically her record as a district attorney and attorney general. So why are you talking about Bashar Assad? Bashar Assad is the president of Syria, having nothing to do. What did Bashar al-Assad affect your time as attorney general and district attorney? No, he didn't he didn't force you to make the decisions that you did. You made the decisions that you made. You went out there, you convicted people wrongly of things that they didn't do. You threw people in jail for, petty drug crimes, smoking marijuana, selling marijuana, drugs, crack cocaine, whatever it was. And you threw them in jail, and you perpetuated the system that unfairly puts African Americans in jail. Now, if you want to have the conversation of how, selling drugs and doing drugs is illegal, that's fine. But you're not helping the system when you are doing something that largely affects people that are minorities, that are people of color. And you being a person of color, you being a black woman, and a lot of people honestly supporting you because you are a black woman, the fact that largely your record is, because your record is not about your time in the Senate. She's only been in the Senate since 2016. When President Trump got elected, that was the year that she won the Senate. And that's not her legacy. Her legacy is attorney general and district attorney, and those are important parts of her career. And I think both times, I know for attorney general she was 8 years. I think for district attorney she may have also been 8 years, maybe 4 years. I'm not absolutely sure on that, but either way, it's a huge, significant part of her time in, I guess you want to call it politics, but in her public duty, being in, having a role in the public and making decisions that affect the public. And she has that reputation, she has that record, and she's proud of it. She claims to be proud of it. She puts it out there as, I did this and I did that for attorney general and this as district attorney, and I did criminal justice reform, blah blah blah. But when she's called out for the bad things that she did in those jobs, in those roles, she doesn't want to talk about it. She wants to talk about Bashar Assad and talk about how Tulsi Gabbard doesn't want to address her time, address the fact that she went and supposedly was an apologist for him, and then, like I said I mentioned in my last segment, when Tulsi called out Kamala, she called her out for her lack of foreign policy experience. The Harris campaign, the Kamala Harris campaign, called her an Assad cheerleader for Assad, and I responded back then, which was, I don't know, I think it was last week, or a week before that. I responded, on Twitter, responding as calling Kamala Harris a cheerleader for Benjamin Netanyahu, and that's true, because that's what she is. So if you want to call a spade, then okay, you're a cheerleader for the Israeli government that's run by a right-wing prime minister, and possibly even a fascist, for sure, a fascist prime minister who may even be racist. I mean, he's killing all these innocent Palestinian people, claiming they're part of terrorist groups like Hamas and everything. But no, you're killing innocent Palestinian people, Arabs. You're killing people that are not guilty of any kind of crimes, and they're not terrorists, but you're killing them anyway, and you're a racist. Has Kamala Harris said anything about that? No. In fact, what she does is she compares what the Israeli people in Israel have gone through to she compares that to the Black Civil Rights Movement. So during the times in the 1960s when Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and everybody was fighting against, the white segregationists and stuff, and fighting for their civil rights to vote, and, have to be able to drink at the same, fountain as white people, and ride in the, front of the bus and all that stuff. Somehow Kamala Harris thinks that's the same struggle that people in Israel have gone through, which is just, it's absurd. It just makes no sense. I mean, I'm telling you guys this, this, it's obvious that the things that she's saying is absurd, but the fact that she says these things, and then saying this thing about, Assad, and then, about Tulsi, and then saying she's, an apologist for him, and then, but not having the ability to self-reflect and see how she's an apologist for a right-wing Israeli government, is just amazing. I can't even see how. I can't believe that she's so myopic, and she obviously can't think objectively, and she just wants to go out there and just put out bullshit talking points. Tulsi went after her after this, and also in her own post debate, maybe even the next day or two after that, they spoke to her, and she said this is absurd, these attacks on her. And it's amazing, because what happened when Kamala and her campaign put out this Assad apologist or cheerleader for Assad message, the media was asking her about it. So what happened? The media was the Kamala Harris campaign was able to change the narrative, and able to get the media and able to manipulate the media into talking about a completely different issue instead of the issue at hand, which is the fact that Kamala Harris's record is horrible and has involved a lot of decisions as Attorney General and District Attorney that destroyed California and destroyed the lives of people in this state that I'm currently living in. But no, the media wants to do the bidding for the establishment and do the bidding for Democratic, establishment candidates like Kamala Harris, and they're going to ask the same questions that Kamala Harris's stupid ass campaign asks, like the smarmy pricks that work for her. They put out all this, Assad apologist shit, and then they just repeat it. So what does the campaign what does the media end up being? They end up becoming a stenographer for Kamala Harris and her spokespeople. That's it. I mean, that's what they do, and it's totally predictable. I mean, who didn't see this coming, right? They were obviously going to do something like that, and that's Kamala Harris knew it, her campaign knew it, and they put that stuff out there knowing that the media was going to ask it, because Tulsi Gabbard is so radical and so horrible for going to Syria and meeting with Bashar Assad, even though if you actually look into what Tulsi Gabbard did, she went and met with the Syrian people. She went and met with people that were struggling from the Syrian war, which is being perpetuated by the United States, Saudi Arabia, even to some extent Israel. And then, Syria has to defend itself with help from Iran and Hezbollah and Russia and stuff. And then what happens? They call Tulsi Gabbard a apologist for Assad for defending the Syrian people, and then daring to have a conversation or meeting with Bashar Assad. And it's crazy. I mean, these people don't have any regard for objectivity or being fair. They just want to put out fear-mongering, propaganda and talking points, so as to smear the person that is not, perfectly in line with the establishment. God forbid.